Hey, what's up? I was trying to let that. I don't know if the camera captured that, but I was trying to let the I was trying to let it be so you could hear like these crows. That there's a lot there. I sometimes I'll get these crows and they're sometimes they're kind of awful. And I wanted to say that, but all things serve a purpose in life. All of us, all different types of people and beings, all serve a purpose. But sometimes the experience of animals can be horrible, like crows, or like even like dogs. And then like if those dogs are your neighbors, it can really be horrible. And it actually will come right through your walls. So you're minding your own business where you live at, but these animals, just different influences of life, the animals will their sounds will come right through the walls and and distract and or annoy you. But you could say that we probably annoy the animals just as much, which is part of my where I wanted to go with this. And then I wanted to say so there's like a lot of this is tying into my previous video talking about like what prophecy might be. And then also and I don't mean that like with religious connotation, but also not outside. I don't mean that limited to religious connotation, but not also outside of and different than religious connotation, both what may have and could be real within religion in the connotation of what that refers to, but then also the politics of what that would refer to, what that would mean to experience policy prophecy, to perceive policy, and or to sell prophecy. So to experience prophecy, to witness prophecy, be respected for a prophecy, be disrespected for prophecy, and sell prophecy, whether and not it had been authentic prophecy. The significance of that within a religious connotation and also outside of religious connotation. I wanted to speak to that a little bit with some thoughts that were occurring, and then also tie in as that expect. So but the what would be significant about prophecy, if there is any significance, is that what would it mean to our present experience, our understanding of our experience, and our decisions, both exactly pivotal, critical, and dynamic is the understanding of our experience and the decisions which will amount to the furtherance of our experience, which the furtherance is also a cycle of, but also part of understanding our experience is within the cycle of our prior and present experience. But it amounts to our destiny, for lack of a better word. And destiny might be arbitrary in that it sounds preconceived and decided for a way. Maybe it may not be preconceived as though already imminent and effective. It may be imminent but not necessarily effective outside of the cycles of our decisions, and choices and dynamic cycles of like the temporal experience of reality. But the causes of destiny may be imminent, but the effects may not be imminent because we still have choice and then cycles within choice, both for towards others, towards ourselves, from others, and towards their selves. There's choice within that, and then also effort and learning and suffering and joy, and that amounts to like to dynamic range and variance that's a function of choice. So you could say the causes are at play, but not necessarily the effects being imminent. So if prophecy had any meaning, it would be to exactly, if prophecy had any value, it would be to either guarantee and or benefit and or mitigate destiny. But destiny doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be so it may be pre-inspired, but not necessarily preconceived as in already effective. And also it's variable, and it may be multiple. So variation within multiplicity, and multiplicity within variation, and choice within all that, and temporal sensation experience of reality within that. That means like our understanding of the progression of activity. So which is cyclical, almost exact, like beyond the word exact, but also cyclical and variable. So destiny can sound redundant. That's something of a little bit of an oxymoron in itself. The way that it smacks, that means taste, and then that it comes off and that it's implied and it has been understood in the past, some of that um, may be an oxymoron and redundancy just in the word itself. So some words like perfect are like that. Destiny may be like that. Even past, present, and future may be like that. Is that it has a lot of redundancy and almost like an oxymoron, and it confound that word. It confounds its own meaning by the nuances and inflections of it, and therefore the arbitrariness of it. Um, it can be like redundant like that. Certain words are like that. Some combinations of words are like that. That'd be like an oxymoron, like dollar bill. According to Tajik Bey, when you say dollar bill, that may be a perfect, not even a greater oxymoron to say a perfect oxymoron, but it may be an oxymoronic statement to say dollar bill because a dollar would refer to a viable a positive unit of value, but also like based on hard currency, like as a I think that comes from the word Occam collar, like a shilling type thing, or like an actual like first in the first place a like a designated currency, like especially around metal, because your older iterations of currency, even the word current according to Tashi Bey refers to like conduction, and it's not outside of properties of alchemy and no less than like electric current, which a lot of our life we still exist within terms of current. And when you break something, when you break a field down, whether that be what's the most objective of field would be like hard physical matter. But even if you break down a rock to its constituents, you're speaking in electrical terms. That is charges, more positive, negative, and neutral, more so. But actually, all things stem from that. I think you can probably reduce the dynamics of anything, any scope of activity, discipline, on one way or another. You could extrapolate or find you could bring that within the scope of chemistry, because what exists outside of chemistry, even consciousness and sentience, what value meaning has it outside of chemistry? What value meaning has anything, any discipline, any undertaking, any interest, any fact outside of consciousness? But then also those different fields are also attended by dynamics of or implications of what could be called chemistry. So you could almost say that you could say that there's two real subjects that exist. And then maybe you could say there's two subjects, and then also a something that's transcendent. So you have like a light, a dark, a positive, a negative, a affirmative, a subjective, an objective, a subjective, and then a transcendent. What might they be? The subject you have the subject of chemistry. That's like science. So you have the sciences and the humanities. That is, you have chemistry. All science can have implications. Is not necessarily different than chemistry. I had a physics teacher explain that, because even the dynamics of physics are attended by and viable through chemistry in the first place. But then that's like the objective component. Then the subjective component, the creativity, is romance. So those might be your two subjects: science, humanities. That is chemistry, romance. What meaning have the humanities outside of chemistry? Also, I mean, so what meaning have the humanities, art, poetry, literature, any of that? What meaning has any of that outside of implications and realities and experience, the human experience of romance? What experience would there be of being human without romance? But still, what would there be of romance without chemistry? So chemistry actually makes possible romance. And when you speak of the greatest romance, you're actually speaking of chemistry. When you speak of the greatest chemistry, you're also speaking of romance. But the only thing that would be transcendent within that, inalienable within that, somewhat beyond that, prior to that, within that, and beyond that, because it's not limited to that, and it also makes that possible, is uh, proportion, that is symmetry, that is mathematics, that is pure concept. Because there had been no the potential for my two fingers to amount to the concept of two. One is that it's within the proportions of the human body that can be expressed and appreciated through symmetry, that are correspondent with the proportions and the activities and the purposes that are also based and substantiated um the proportions of this reality, of this existence, such as that my symmetry, the symmetry of my hands, my fingers, is within the dynamic and the viability of the proportions of this existence. That is the economy, efficiency, and discipline of this existence, the cadence within that. Then also, um, uh, um, wait. So it's the symmetry and the proportions that is the purpose. Um, but the concept that the two fingers could amount to two, that concept existed as a potential, potentially before anything had existed. Because a concept actually doesn't come into being. It doesn't actually come into exist within or without being. It's actually somewhat beyond that, in that it's always, it had whatever has existed exists now. There was the potential, the concept of my fingers amounting to two was likely before anything had existed. That's actually a deep concept, is that before things had existed and amounted all the way up to having a reality that would fashion beings that have fingers that can amount to two and that they can recognize as meaning as two. Before any of that was inspired and had conspired to take effect, was the potential for there to be something, the meaning of two. Did the meaning of two, what two represents, that value, but also meaning, synonymous, value and meaning may be synonymous. Did that exist prior to the concept, the inspiration, then the conception, then the birthing, then the maintenance, then maybe the destruction and dissolution, and but maybe still inspiration within that? Does the meaning predate that, attend that, transcend that, supersede that? And if that did not, if it does, what does that say about that, what exists? If it doesn't, what does that mean about what's possible? And then how did something exist for, and what possibility would there be to exist before something would have existed? That's pretty deep. And then also, just that I referenced two is deep within that, because reality is duplex, or so a lot of life is duplex. It takes two to tango. It takes two to make a being. Therefore, it takes two to make a sensation of experiencing existence. So two is significant within that. Then that I would reference two as a to make a reference to a pure concept, because my two fingers are still united, actually, because they're united through my arm and through my body. So I can be appreciated as one being, congruent of purpose at least. But my purposes are exactly bifurcated. That means split, seamed in two, to amount to two hands, two brains, two eyes, two nostrils, two lungs, and so forth. But then also my experience of reality from that standpoint, just that I would exist duplex, but also from that point, think duplex, speak duplex, view duplex. The most potent example of that would be like your male leaning and feminine leaning, that is like leading and following, and then also like what maybe experience as dark and light, the balance of that, maybe the actual standpoint of the unity, but still we are comprised of being dual. I think we likely think dual, because a lot of times we can't, it's difficult to make up your mind. That might actually be deeper than it would seem. It's not that it's difficult for you to make up your mind because you're not a real person or an authentic person or an earnest person, but actually you do have two minds, you have two brains. So, and a lot of your experience of life is from the same standpoint and the same reality that would give you two brains. So there's a nuance to a lot of things. There's a complexity to a lot of things. There's a duality to a lot of things. That might be some of the difficulty and redundancy in communication. Like, even as we're being forthright, is that communication is difficult. Decisions are difficult. Perception is difficult. Expressing perception, evaluating perception, making decisions based on evaluation. All that's very difficult. Way more difficult than we appreciate on the surface. Then I've said in other videos, speaking is more complex than we appreciate on the surface, as it's been attributed all the way up to the faculty of a deity as human beings are articulating according to India, as in the deity of Devani. So speaking may be so complex as to be akin to what it would take a deity to facilitate, but then also maybe thinking, reasoning, and judgment, rationalizing, and then further breaking that down into communication. It may be as profound or a part of what would be called Devani from the Eastern standpoint. But just that, I think that, and I've said in another video that I think that if someone were to say that they've had this experience before, like an unlikely experience or a profound experience, a unique experience, whether spiritual, emotional, personal, circumstantial, professional, what have you, it would actually romantic, what have you. It would actually, if you looked at that, what they're claiming, it would actually make sense if they had more than one of that experience, because one is that we exist within cycles, so history tends to repeat itself, but also things are exactly balanced. So if you were to have an experience that's viable, that's possible, activated, viable, and realized in this dual reality, you likely would have a dual version of that or a balancing of that experience. So this joke you say is hilarious, you make people laugh. This next time you stick your foot in your mouth, it actually may have been imminent that if you are attempting humor, but also practicing humor, and it may be good at humor, good for practicing or good in the first place, or good for appreciating, and therefore better at practicing and being humorous. That all that and what that would mean for you to come to that, exist like that, and then float that, land that, just the momentum of that, but the balance of that also in the cycle of that, it may amount to you soon thereafter sticking your foot in your mouth, or you're over here and you have favors or favor, or you make an impression on a female counterpart or a male counterpart that's favorable, that's enjoyable, that's sexy, that's cool. Then you get to having the opposite of that experience, as in someone doesn't appreciate your appearance or presentation to the point of that other experience. It may have substantiated your esteem or giving you real experiences that would make you more successful as a person then and later, both professionally, socially, romantically. It only, a lot of things just exacerbate and redouble. So you actually won as a look, as an appearance, as a sensation, as a statement, as a vibe with a person. Then that amounts to an experience with them, but also without them, and what that meant to you and the experience of yourself and your disposition. But that's working there, and it's rock and roll. But then, and it doesn't have to be great, it can just be a glance, because in the Eastern sense, in the deepest like spiritual sense, some of the deepest romance and poetry is more so of a glance. The value which you won with another person was a certain glance that betrayed some real attraction or interest or affinity or something. But all that can amount to friendship, lovemaking, experiences, then even family, whatnot, all that can amount to, the potency of that is within the glance. But then on the other side of that, the exact opposite of that, strife, fighting, that cool experience can make you start to get on and look cool in certain circles. The antithesis of that, the opposite, it can start to make you outed and bad in certain circles that are as detrimental as that other experience may be beneficial in opening opportunities. This compromises opportunities, even the opportunity to live, as it goes wrong. So I meant to say is that things are balanced like that. So you have a look that can win you favor here, but it can win you contempt here, and the contempt is as potent within a glance. All that can be achieved of blessings in relationships, up to and including family creation. The opposite of that is possible, up to including family deletion, as contempt goes. But it's within a glance. But all I meant to say is that it's exactly balanced like that. So if you're having this type of experience, it may be likely and imminent that you would have at some point the exact antithesis of that. That's actually not outside of that, because the antithesis of that, and that you could draw the antithesis of that, is part of what substantiates the affirmative experience. So the actual the detrimental, the favorable, and the contemptible, the detestable, that's actually one phenomenon, one dynamic, one potential, one activation, one experience. It's actually together like that. So and they inform the other like that. So that you're having this appearance, now you're winning favor, but also you're also winning favor because you could draw contempt with that. Over here, you're drawing contempt with that, but you're also drawing contempt with that because you could draw favor with that. So that's a little bit of how dynamic our reality is, in that things are exactly balanced like that, but also experience and phenomena and things occurring are like that. So I found that, like with opportunity, I think that a lot of times when you have a really incredible opportunity, it's something of a fork in the road, because there actually be some. So you just got a job offer for the best job in the world, came to you right now. You can have this right now. All that you've been struggling with, you can leave that behind right now. Ticket for you right now. A ticket to not paradise in that it's all good, because all good might be too good, but a ticket to a new life, a better life, a new job, a better job, or not needing to have a job, or just a different life right here. And then a couple minutes later, you might be like, oh, wait, what's this? I got another email. What's this? It might be something exactly as potent and valuable, but different, so much as to conflict with that and actually give you pause to think which one is the better decision. And you can actually be at a first ethical, then existential, professional, artistic dilemma that's actually really difficult, because you exactly got two opportunities at the same time, such as that. So it's good, but almost too good to be true, as in two opportunities. And it's a struggle at that point, because life never stops being a struggle, but it's also balanced for that. And that the second opportunity is as good and maybe a part of whatever led up to and constitutes the sturdy opportunity. The second opportunity is actually the same thing as the first opportunity, but this reality is just dual like that. So some of these videos, I'll have an idea like in a day, and it's almost like for exactly two different ideas at the same time. So like, what would that be like to talk to someone that's prophetic? I'm not claiming prophecy with this, but I'm saying, what would that be like to talk to someone that's prophetic? If they actually are channeling what's great, they actually might be experiencing exactly two ideas at the same time from what's great at the same time. You would think that, like, if someone's prophesying, they're channeling insight, it's exactly singular, congruent. This is the path. This is the answer. This is the way we must go. This is what happened. This, that. But actually, you might actually have two, because you have two brains, two ears, two thoughts, two minds, two a lot of two of things. So you might actually be getting two ideas at the same time. So it might be, these are the way, these are the thing, these are what had happened, these are what we must do, these are that, these are this, these are those, and not this is that, these are those. So sometimes, like when you're talking, like I'll talk to people, and like I'm thinking of thoughts that are occurring to me with inspiration and insight based on my unique experience and discipline in life. From that standpoint, I'm channeling. I'm not claiming channeling without or beyond, although we're always connected to without and beyond. So anything that would be profound or valuable to emanate within us, you can't isolate that from what's without from us. The influence of that we can understand, the ideas that we can understand and that we cannot, and how we're influenced by what we can understand and not. A lot of that is broader than what we are. But as we're experiencing insight that's original to our mind, at least interesting to our mind, which is a standpoint to be interesting and have meaning to others, it may actually be something of dual like that, because we're actually dual beings, with two parents, two, and then two of a lot of things. But a lot of times when you talk to people, they'll think that, like, oh, you're having. So I actually got cited for that when I was a young person. I was attempting statements similar to statements that I would make here, and also free of they were shorn of religious dogma or doctrination or ideology, because I had friends when I was young that grew up around church, and then when I started to become some of who I was as a young person, which was part of like faith and scholarship, they were quick to disabuse me of any notions of like of thinking that you're they would be quick to remind you that all people have shortcomings, and that they almost overdid it with that, but they were very adamant about, yeah, but you had been this and we saw you as this, so you sure enough in the hell can't be something different than what you had seen yourself, or that you might be reading about in these books. You had been this once, and you are not what you would think would be great in these books. Or if you are anything in those books, you'd be like the ones that are asking for help for what's great in these books. Don't forget that. That was their standpoint, what they communicated, and they weren't necessarily wrong for that. but they also weren't right for browbeating me with that either as a young person developing my faith and my personhood, which was part of faith. But such that even at that young age, when I was having exposure to some actual saints like in church, the heritage of that, the culture of that, the heritage, but also the blessings and insight and lessons and mercy and worship and fellowship. I tempered that with the fact that I know how I was around. I was never ignorant. I can say that even when I was inspired, sometimes having zeal, I wasn't ignorant to what other people's attitudes were, because I had grown up with them since before I had been around faith. So even when I was expressing myself, like I got around to expressing myself in front of people with titles, both in and out of church, both in and out of medical facilities, different statured people. But I largely wasn't appreciated for where I was coming from. But even as these were ideas that had meaning to me, were original to my experience of life, and that I was sharing in good faith for enlightenment. Because even if someone really thought that they were enlightened, they may not actually they might not be content with their enlightenment, because there's an instinct to share it. According to Daisetsu Suzuki, we're social beings. So even something like enlightenment, there'd be a social component, or at least a social inclination with that. The same is true of insight. There's a social component. So there's a inclination to share insight socially, but also it becomes stronger for being social. Enlightenment may be like that also, is that it may be happened upon in privacy, but it's more, there's an inclination to be public about it at one point, likely just because we're social so long as we're living. That, according to Osho, that might be the difference between a sage and what's called a bodhisattva, is that a sage is one that's content unto themselves and with themselves, including their insight. And it doesn't have to go beyond that for a sage. For a bodhisattva, there's the enlightenment is such, the love is such, that there's a taste, a relish, but also a deep yearning to benefit others. And also from the most humble of station, maybe from great station, but equally and as much from humble station, to get to the point of enlightenment and so the ends of a pole overlap. You get to the point of enlightenment, you come all the way back to the beginning to start over, but with the taste of enlightenment and inclination to help others that are at the beginning phase, but not yet privy to the sensation and beauty of enlightenment, to serve them and with them, but with reference to the sensation of having once tasted something akin to enlightenment. That's the standpoint of a bodhisattva, and also the mission and dispatch of a bodhisattva according to Eastern faith traditions, according to Osho. Bodhi, I think that I'm not sure what Bodhi means. I think that might mean great. So like Bodhi Dharma means like the morality and ethics and cause and effect that protect us, but also amount to the harmony of life that can be experienced as law. Dharma. But so Bodhi Dharma, that might be great Dharma. Bodhisattva is like we have different disposition. So we have a self-interest. That's what makes us similar and still animals. That's like tamasic. Then we have an active interest that's also similar to animals, but unique in our iteration of being an animal. That's called Raja. Then you have altruism, that is recognition of self in other, interest in serving self in other, self through other, self as other as self. That's sattva, and those temper one another in this reality. In most phenomena, most constituents of reality, material and organic, are comprised of some unique tendency or lenient or habit towards a tendency in one, and a combination of those propensities for motility, motion, ceaseless motion, because this reality is ceaseless motion. Self-interest, this reality is self-interested, ceaseless self-interest that is like discipline. But then also our altruism, giving. So we are ceaselessly comprised and demanded, and not viable and not enjoyable without self-interest and giving and activity. That's for all beings, and that gives us some of our actual inclination and actually our appearance. So So what makes one species different than another, one person different than another? I think it's your lane and niche in an ecosystem would lead up to and substantiate and further your viability as your particular expression of a being, of a person. Your appearance is not different than your lane and your niche and currently, but that's also not different than your ancestors, because you are your ancestors currently, then and currently, and then beyond. You're still your ancestors, but also your ancestors, yourself, and your descendants, they're also a part of your unique niche and lane. And so long as you may exist, you will be within a niche. And that niche, as you came into it, you can't take that away from the history of your ancestors and yourself in this life, and some of the viability and strengths of your descendants in the next iteration. But there's no limitation to anything. Our descendants and a lot of ourselves in this life are spoken for and decided for, because they've chosen and we've chosen. We haven't completed chosen, but they have chosen and we're choosing. But our descendants have not yet chose. So they can still be different things, exist in different lanes, different niches, that has become different beings, different people, different expressions, iterations. But still, we are constituted and viable as our niche and lane. And that niche that we would find and that we would be suitable in, successful in, but also inclined towards and geared towards, is part of our unique combination of self-interest, activity, and giving. So that from the Eastern standpoint, that constitutes this reality, those three dynamics like that. But the giving of which, the sattva, that's called, and you combine that with bodhi, that's bodhisattva. And that's a real giver, both in terms of insight and intellect, but also service. That's giving. Sagacity, being a sage, existing like a sage, but also conducting oneself like a sage. That's not necessarily sattvic, but it constitutes a high degree of understanding and familiarity of what could be appreciated as sattvic, and may came from sattvic contributions and undertakings in one's own life and that of others. But actually, a sage might be even a little bit more animalistic, that is tamasic, that is self-interested, if you think about it, just in that a sage is content unto themselves. You could say the exception proves a rule, like in a spectrum, where just to be self-interested from the standpoint of a sage, not to bother anyone, to be content to oneself, that may actually be the best standpoint of benefiting others, and that might actually be beyond that of a bodhisattva, because the bodhisattva is interested in helping people, but you can potentially injure people by helping them, and you also can potentially benefit people by not helping them. That is helping yourself, which is also not helping people necessarily. So you can't say that the sage or bodhisattva is better or worse, but there's an instinct to share things like insight. And so when I would be around people with titles, I would sometimes want to be expressing what's on my mind that would be insightful to me, but also based on scholarship and worship that I undertook privately and publicly. But then I wouldn't be appreciated for that, and I would be attempting abstract statements like I do on this channel, it may be appreciated as bifurcated, and they would, in like scientifically or maybe socially, they would designate that as tangential or erratic. But one is that I wasn't speaking for the purposes of garnering income, where a lot of people that would speak a message, they actually have a financial interest. Even those medical people had a financial interest. That financial interest, it may rein in the actual the sublime aspect of our mind, the channeling, but also the purposes to make it more singular. So what can anyone really agree upon? What can anybody be solid about, would be self-interest, like money incentive. So you could maybe say, I didn't have enough of a money incentive to be singular enough to impress them or to get by with them. So I was being more so insightful and inspirational as I experienced that, but also open with it, so much so as to potentially be dual, or attempting to combine dual concepts, because that's actually what insight and learning and creativity and innovation is. It's to combine different things, opposites, but also different. That's I think that might be deeper too than it seems on the surface, because I think that life, according to Arthur Avalon, is exactly heterogeneous and homogeneous, that is distinct and similar. It's great for being both. And I think that some of the current of life, like the pulsing of the ocean, that's the standpoint of being so similar as to become distinct, but then overcoming distinction back into similarity, for being similar in the first place, coming through distinction and at last becoming similar again. That transcendence right there is, I think that's what current comes from. And that's real power. That's real unchecked, or it's checked by itself. Otherwise there wouldn't be enough resistance to create power, because power actually comes from resistance. But it's viable, and it's undeniable once it's viable. So it's that's what omnipotence is similarity within distinction, so much as to overcome distinction, to resound or to resettle as similarity. But for overcoming distinction, that's charge, that's unity, that's real unity, because it's not guaranteed. It's decided. It's that's decided unity, not ambivalent unity or idealistic unity. That's decided unity, effective power, omnipotence. But also, as ideas go, it's similar in that when you have an idea, you just combine things that would have seemed, you found similarity within what's distinct, disparate, heterogeneous. Thereby you resolve something, you solve something, you gain a charge for that. You overcame ignorance to combine two different ideas. Artistically, that'd be like metaphor, but then, or even comically, that'd be like metaphor, because a lot of comedy is actually art, but it's metaphor. It's combining different ideas, and the resolving of those ideas is what, or those concepts, that's what gives you the sensation of joy and humor. But also in learning, in healing, for learning also, because learning is deeply connected to healing and is a part of healing. That resolving like that is what is that's what actually, that's what knowledge and learning is. And knowledge is power. So that's what power is, as the mind the intellect goes. And our standpoint for experiencing and expressing power as human beings is from the mind. So that's what we're preoccupied with, is the mind. Medical people included, religious clergy included, political clergy included. They're interested in power, and even some of their affinity for and worship for what they appreciate, of appreciating themselves as appreciating what could be great, is the power of what's great, the efficiency in the economy, but more so the power of what's great. And the power is actually in the unity that is overcoming difference. But they wouldn't appreciate someone that's attempting to overcome the difference of different concepts in their face in real time to offer insight. But it may appear dual, bifurcated, as they would say, erratic. That's actually a little bit of a jargon to say erratic, because that's like a buzzword. And these buzzwords are actually part of manipulating people. That's part of social engineering, as buzzwords. But I just want to point out that it would make sense that if someone would be channeling insight, it may actually be bifurcated, and from that standpoint, abstract or nuanced or profound or roundabout. But that's actually how you get about to a unique understanding as original, as it's appreciated as original. It's interesting. Most times, like you get into like say you get into a like an educational forum, religious also, but educational forum, and people say, wow, this is real learning. So you go by a college or a university, wow, this is the seat of learning, this is where real learning is happening, people must really be learning here. But you go there and everybody's quoting everybody else, like they're citing this one, they're doing this based on this one because this one said that one said that, and this is what we can do, look what we can do because this one had said that, this and that, that and that, what someone else got to say about that and that. But if you're too sloppy about it or obvious about it, you're getting cited for plagiarism and you're out of there. But you could almost say that these are nothing but a plagiarism venue. Higher learning, education, it's nothing but a plagiarism venue. What did you go there to do other than learn the ideas of other people? Because if they were your own ideas, what would you need to go to an institution that's steeped in the ideas of other people? What purpose would you have for higher learning if you are interested in and fathoming and concocting original ideas? But then also, these places they are the seats of learning there. So all I meant to say is that they're interested in original thought, original idea, original contributions, original creativity in higher learning. However, they are wanting you and they're making you beholden to the contribution and ideas of other people, and what you have to offer is not viable if it doesn't stand on the contributions of other people. However, you're expected to be original, and you can get reproof if you're too obvious or direct or not organized about how you derive from the ideas of others your own ideas that you're also expected. So you're expected to derive from other people, to have sources, incite your sources, yet also expected to have original ideas. My father went far into higher education. He went all the way to the furthest end of that, the highest degree, which is from research. Then some of the highest roles, which is like teaching other people to do research, and also doing further research. That's and the demands of that. That's all based on the ideas of other people, combining the ideas of other people with your own. But then, and I'm not saying that it's possible to even get away from that, because that might be as much as what I'm doing in this video, because I'm citing different umpteen ideas from other people. But that's not the value. So the what I'm saying is that if you were to do something original, you're gonna be combining different ideas, different sources to an original effect and an outcome, if at best. But also, but if it's to be respected, then it's along certain lines and channels of citing other people. If it's not respected, it may come from other people's ideas. You were clear about where you got the ideas. You're also offering your own ideas that are part of combining other ideas with your own take on that. But if it's not respected, if it's not part of a clear delineation or a clear linear progression of ideas, like a canon, a background, a trail of ideas, it's still part of that because it can't not be that. But if that background is not respected, then the learning, the understanding is not respected, no less than the creativity in ideas and combining of ideas. So if it's free form, like what I'm doing on this channel, and it's not checked by, it's not beholden to, but also not abiding within any line of thinkers that are curated by someone with a preconceived notion that's also part of economic incentive, like a higher institution, it's not viable. But it's actually the same thing. So even were you to make statements online like I'm doing now, or in front of medical figures or religious clergy, it's the same thing where you're doing the same thing, but you're not respected for doing the same thing because it's not aligned this specific line of channel that they stamp and they support. You can confound, contrast, contend intellectually with some of that line of reasoning and those thinkers potentially in a public venue, if you have enough room to communicate and enough of an objective audience, maybe subjective also, but objective audience. But it won't be tolerated like that. So I just meant to say that it's unique that we would be having a lot of ideas at once, but it's not different than what it is to fathom or to think of an original idea. It's not different than having different ideas going on, and also to make an original statement, like whatever medium you would be doing, painting, comedy, what have you. It's going to be about metaphor and combining opposites, similarity within opposites, and opposite within similarity, like as in a pun. But then also ideas are almost exactly the same thing, and so but it may not go over well as you're actually demonstrating that in real time on camera, no less. So I have different ideas, and one idea that I have sometimes, I was thinking like, so like a lot of these, sometimes you have like different things that are popular in culture, like different things that are very influential, but where sometimes you don't realize the conspicuousness and therefore the potential detriment and red flag of something that would that offer itself too easy, value that would offer itself too easy, insight, inspiration, creativity too easy. So for me, the Matrix film is like that. It's a little bit too easy. The Matrix describes our iteration of reality almost too succinctly, too creatively, too conveniently, and too broadly and successfully to really propose a challenge or a viable, actionable standpoint to buck the system or to do something better within and or without the system of the Matrix. The Matrix doesn't. I'm not. I always had a little bit of misgivings about the Matrix film because it was just a little bit too available, too easy, too popular to really be anything different than the Matrix. So the Matrix might actually be the most, the strongest. So as much as life is like a Matrix now, would it really be, would it function this much like a Matrix and feel this much like a Matrix if the Matrix movie wasn't as popular as it was? Would we not still be in the 90s where like, yeah, man, this internet stuff, yeah, this and that, but these CDs are getting kind of whack, man. We're about to do something new, man, or we're ready for the next new thing. So we were always ready for the next new thing. Until even as the internet came out, we were ready for the next new thing because you had some cool stuff on the internet, like the like NBA.com. And one thing I forgot to reference in that I did that series prior to this about the iterations of technology and how we got to where we're at. But one thing I failed, I was following some of the line of how the printed material up to and including the printed press, up to and including the proliferation of books, up to and including the comfort of book titles outside of what would be tolerated by religious authority and or attitudes, then all the way up to and then I got off into the personal computer and the explosion of the internet. But I failed to mention Jeff Bezos and Amazon because he exactly fitted into that history of like the .com boom, but also existing within and as a bookstore, which is part of the progression of technology. Books are the beginning of our current iterations of the explosion of technology. You could say the book, it may have started with the book, but then it came back to the book with Jeff Bezos and Amazon books, one of the earlier iterations of success on the internet. And then a lot of what became history once Jeff Bezos did that, when he seemed access to the personal computer, digital or online connectivity, World Wide Web, and bookstores. And then after that, merchandise and mass consumption. He did a lot with that, and that's pivotal. I forgot to mention. I was meaning to mention that, but I forgot to mention that in the video prior to this about the experience, the testimony of a '90s childhood as technology goes. But it is significant with Jeff Bezos like that. And he started similar to the story we're given for Bill Gates. I don't know if that's what their real lifestyles were, but that's what the story goes. But um, but but we may have got bored with the internet and got onto something different or a better version of the internet if we hadn't been so convinced, traumatized by the Matrix film, because the Matrix film actually made the Matrix become the Matrix, because that's how it was existing like that, but it doesn't truly exist like that until we experience it like that, and we experience like that when we think it like that. So the Matrix, if anything, we're the real Matrix. Human beings are the real Matrix. So we've been in a digital reality since we've been walking on 2 feet and having thinking like we're on 2 feet, being on 2 feet, but also using our hands for being on 2 feet and thinking like being on 2 feet. We've been in a digital reality that time, but we've also been in a Matrix because we've been each other. When you say the Matrix, what you're really saying is, I'm my brother's keeper. Yes, your mom takes care of you, but you're not going to survive without your brothers. And your mother wouldn't have had you without your father, who was someone's brother. And they also survived because of their brothers. And your mother survived because of her brothers, and her father, who survived because of his brothers, and his mother and her brothers, and such not. So it's because of your brothers. So the Matrix, it means like a womb. It can be akin to a woman's womb, but also a nursery of children. And it functions similar to a womb and also a nursery of children, where I don't know if babies fight for attention in the womb or sustenance in the womb, but they do fight their whole life in a nursery and beyond, and for no less than attention. But then we're the same way in the Matrix, which is called womb, but it's still like a nursery and like a womb. But what that means, and none of that goes anywhere and is viable or means anything without I am my brother's keeper. So you can't get past the contribution of men and brothers, and you wouldn't actually have a Matrix. The Matrix wouldn't have been put together, but it also wouldn't work without brothers. Sisters too, yes. Women's too, yes. Daughters too, yes. Mothers, aunts, yes, nieces, yes, are part of who and what makes the Matrix, but none of that is viable without brothers still. The respect among brothers, but also the work that's possible because of the respect between brothers. So I am my brother's. So we're digital. We're human beings. We have digits. Brothers have digits and are digital, but still, I am my brother's keeper. That's what this reality is, and we're not existing out past our brother's keeping. But then, but but so that's not new. There's nothing new about that. And so we were beholden to one another, and we were subject to one another our whole existence, such as to be subjected to one another, as in the Matrix. But that film, The Matrix, they presented it as though digital reality is anything new, and having a Matrix is anything new. That couldn't have been further from the truth, because like I've extrapolated, we've been digital this whole time on our feet and thinking the way we do for being on our feet, according to Osho, and being able to manipulate our hands, have the opposable thumb, but also have the thought process to go with the skill that would attend the opposable thumb. All that is digital. And we've been keeping one another viable, my brother's keeper, that is beholden to one another, blessed by one another, also limited by one another. That's my brother's keeper. That's the Matrix there. And any nursery you would have, or woman's womb, that'd be viable for being impregnated by a male, that's only viable because of brothers keeping of one another. So nothing at all is new about what anything was presented or viable within the film The Matrix because of human beings. But it's presented as new, and then we started to function that way and think that the Matrix is this all my. So this concept of Agent Smith ass popping up out here and there and jumping out on you, that's still part of oppression, because that's like the boogeyman. And the boogeyman is formidable because anyone can assume the purposes and therefore become an agent. According to King Noble, whenever you're acting within the purposes of something, from whenever your standpoint, you're an agent of something. So any and everyone can be Agent Smith, but the older word of that was the boogeyman. Any and everyone can and was the boogeyman, as they align with the purposes and the opportunities of being the boogeyman, because we're all vulnerable to one another at different times in some way. You actually can't get outside of being vulnerable to other human beings. From that standpoint, any human being can choose to become, and that is put the boogeyman on you. Anyone can do that. But also in the Matrix reality, with everyone having access to the Matrix and potentially injuring one another's stature for their access to the Matrix, anyone can and will become Agent Smith like that. And a lot of what keeps the internet, what keeps humans in check, and also the Matrix in check, had been the boogeyman in the past, Agent Smith in the Matrix, and then exactly both of that currently is Agent Smith and the boogeyman currently. So be careful when you go out, like you go to some bad, dangerous place, like where I grew up at. I grew up in the Southwest. I went out there recently. Everyone, I'll talk to a beautiful woman, but be careful. Watch yourself out there. Be careful. I don't got nothing against. Now I did have reason to be careful by the time I got out of there, but I didn't have nothing against no one, and I wasn't doing nothing unethical. But everyone wants you to be so careful everywhere you go. Even sturdy people, beautiful people, rugged people. Be careful though. Be careful out there. What they're saying is the boogeyman could get you, and the boogeyman is believable, and the boogeyman puts up sometimes, like when people do different things, like you don't understand what people do things for. So sometimes when people victimize people heinously, needlessly, but also poignantly and publicly and visibly, part of that is because they're substantiating the potential of the boogeyman. They're actually investing in the idea and the heritage of the boogeyman. Then that there's a boogeyman, there's certain lifestyles, aesthetics, appearance, dynamics within this, even professions, that are viable because of the potential of the boogeyman. So you think that, oh, so man, did you hear what happened on such and such street last night? Man, something crazy went down. Oh, that's messed up, man. I feel bad for that person's family, man. Oh, they got a funeral, man. All that, man. All that trauma, right? Something went down. Pop, 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 pop. The middle of the night. These they jumped on it, right? The cameras that they got, like these police cameras in certain places, the gunshot camera, the gunshot finder, it turned on. Deep gunshots going on. Gunshot, gunshot, gunshot. They find out exactly where's the gunshot. Then they send the police out there to go there to the gunshot. They actually do have a victim on their hands, but now they also got attention that comes with that, and the severity of that, the trauma of that, the importance of that with the police. So you didn't see how they actually just gave you a spectacle right there. The police are part of the spectacle. They substantiate the spectacle. They make it serious and serious. Because if you didn't have police and you got people out there blasting one another, it's tragic. It's heinous. It's unfortunate. But it wouldn't be as hella serious without the police who also get paid to make it hella serious like that. Because man, at a certain point, it'd just be like, damn, like, man, you just stepped on another bug, man. Why are you stepping on these bugs, man? That's kind of sick, man. That's kind of nasty. It's not necessarily cool to step on bugs. It's kind of heinous. It's kind of sick. And I'm not advocating injuring innocent creatures by any means. But you step on a bug, you assault an animal. That's not incredibly impressive. It's actually kind of like sad and kind of like nasty. But it's also not as serious as victimizing a person. But you victimize a person, and that's serious. One is that they're making money off of that. The police, the media, whatnot, the morgues, whatnot. A lot of people are making money. The YouTuber Naeem Edwards did a video talking about how lucrative money making is, and she broke that down, how the actual money gets broken down. But police, they spectacularize crime. They make crime serious, but also a spectacle. And then, so they somewhat substantiate it and they make it more interesting, more lucrative, more valuable. The police do. And they get paid that whole time. They get paid to respond to and investigate and persecute crime, but also they get paid for people being afraid of crime. Because if you weren't afraid of crime, you wouldn't pay for the police. So you don't see how the police can be part of the problem. Part of the problem of useless and needless and heinous crime up to wholesale genocide, which I think we're in a phase of genocide now in the United States, but also drug epidemics, which is also part of genocide, but drugs unto themselves, and the destabilizing of communities, and the damage of that economically, but also the viability of economically, because like I was saying, dollar bill is an oxymoron, and also, but it's actually no truer of what a dollar. And I didn't finish enunciating that the bill part of that is that a bill is a debt, and also it's a bogus paper writ. So it's the exact opposite and an oxymoron of what a dollar is, but from the standpoint of Tashriq Bey, but you don't see how the drugs and the crime, they're profitable, but also they destabilize communities, and they're also more viable and lucrative and vivid and traumatic because of police work, even though police ostensibly create opposition to people that are victimized innocent people, but it just actually keeps it going, and the police are getting compensated that whole time. So it's sophisticated, but it keeps itself going like that, and but the Matrix, the film, I think that it did a similar thing where it actually more so kept things going, because the internet wasn't that big of a deal. It was a big deal, but it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't life or death. It wasn't like people weren't stuck on the internet. They weren't stuck spending time on it, but they weren't also stuck with it on their mind back in the day. But once the film The Matrix came on, then the film the Matrix was this thing that you can't get away from. And it became that when we started thinking like that. But it hadn't entirely been that at first. It can be appreciated. That was my experience. But then I also think that things like the police, they are paid from our fear of the boogeyman, but they also help give the sensation and viability and experience of having a boogeyman. The boogeyman and people that would identify and function like the boogeyman, they're also compensated for the fact that the game between cop and robber, both cops and robbers are compensated that they can be appreciated as the boogeyman. The boogeyman is compensated by, but also makes a job for cops and robbers. The boogeyman does that. So, but also the concept of Agent Smith does that in the Matrix, and the combination of Agent Smith and the boogeyman makes the internet serious like that. But I guess this one is getting a little bit winded, but I had some more ideas I wanted to run with. The more one that I wanted to say is that sometimes I think that you don't appreciate but some of these films like The Matrix, they do every once in a while a film will come by and it'll show you the deeper mechanism of the hand that feeds. So that's what The Matrix was supposed to be for. It's supposed to show you the mechanics of the hand that feeds. you owe your existence to the Matrix. You may not be beyond the Matrix unless you get to the point of becoming Neo, but Neo barely did it and whatnot. So, but the film The Matrix lets you know you're in a matrix, and therefore made the matrix realer, and understood. So you now may understand the hand that you may not bite. You may not bite Agent Smith's hand. You understood that with the Matrix. Agent Smith's hand feeds you. You somewhat understood that with the Matrix, and it became realer for the film The Matrix. But an older iteration of that, there's this book about the animal. So I'm my brother's keeper, but the animals are your brother's keeper also. So sometimes you don't appreciate how the animals safeguard us and make us viable, and are they're actually kind of like our parents. One is that they support so what does your parent do? They give you food to eat. But who gives your parents food to give you to eat? The animals do that. So the animals are a lot of our keeper. But there'd be like this film back in the day called Birds, I think, and it was like, what would that mean if birds became a problem? Like if birds just started eating people in mass. Like you can't walk outside of your door without each bird in the vicinity converging on you, so that you can't walk out the door. Would that not shut down life? If the animals really had a problem with us, but like an instinct to have a problem with us as a group, it's just like we kind of have instincts about racism, and we become a problem to one another based on our instincts of hatred, but we also are like connected and have like a spider sense about being connected, about marginalizing, ostracizing, and boycotting different people socially and professionally, which also reinforce one another. What if animals suddenly became racist towards human beings together, but so much as to attack us, birds? How would life be viable like that? So what would that mean if birds became a problem, animals became a problem? That was that film, but it does show you that we're actually next up to it among animals, and they're more formidable if they had the numbers or the inclination and instinct to operate with numbers. They, like humans do, they could be a problem. The birds could, but I think that the birds actually are a problem to a degree, just because Osho has said that sometimes you don't appreciate how sophisticated and corrupting our company is as human beings. Birds don't like to be touched by humans, and I think that birds won't be accepted between among themselves if they've been touched by a human. Um, that might actually be some of our hesitation is around touching other people, but especially like touching children. I don't mean to be vulgar with that or flippant or just introduce that out of nowhere, but I think that there's this big, like, a lot of people, they don't want touch when it's not welcome and invited, but also people especially don't want people touching children. Now, just touching something, there's not nothing bad about touching someone for the sake of touch in itself. I'm not talking about sexually, but just to touch someone. Nothing is exactly a problem about touching someone. It is a problem. I'm not saying it's not a problem, but the actual act, the physical reality of contacting another person with your touch, that's not entirely all the way out, all that's not all out wrong, bad from it in itself, in that it's a detriment. But I think that if you have been touched by another person, like as a child, either another child or an adult, but you've actually been touched up to and including sexual contact, but just simply touched, that can affect the way that you understand yourself, but also your mannerisms, such that other children first, and then when you become an adult, other people boycott you based on the fact that you've been touched before. It's similar like with birds. If a bird has been touched by a human being, that bird won't be engaged by other human beings because of that touch. The other birds can sense that. So I just want to, just as content, food for thought, that might be instinctually what we have a problem with about people touching children, also touching one another when it's not appropriate, is that other people will respond to us differently because we've been touched. Then that affects the way we experience ourselves and are experienced by others. So I wanted to point that out, that that's what the touching is about, is that it's actually the boycotting, the detriment of being touched by another person, a peer and or adult, as a child and or adult. The detriment is not exactly and only in the touch, even up to and where it including sexual contact, which is heinous. I'm not saying that's not heinous, but the detriment, the damning effect, the pain, the suffering, the torment, it's actually from the boycott and the ostracism that will be experienced by that child and or adult, by other children and or adults, then and or as adults, for being touched. That's what's very significant. But I'm a lot of my life is like that, because a lot of people, they ostracize me and boycott me and marginalize me, similar as though like running away from a bird. Like I sometimes, like, I'll make humor. Sometimes my humor works and it doesn't. But sometimes people would damn near run away, like when I got something to say, at humorously in public, or intellectually online, or intellectually in class, or intellectually in a faith setting in church, or professionally in a professional setting. Any different setting, people will run away from me, similar to like birds like that. So it's interesting. Sometimes you actually don't know how and when you were touched. I have certain ideas and memories of my childhood, but I actually don't remember what it is that got me, because a lot of my life was like that, like people running away from me like a bird like that. But I don't actually know how or when that started. I don't have a conscious recollection of that. And it didn't necessarily have to be direct. Sometimes it can be indirect. For example, say I'm about to walk into a group of kids, but some kids said something about me really, really mean spirited, but maybe there was something of reality, or there was actual fact that they referenced to say something really, really mean spirited and wicked about me. Really, really mean spirited, authentically mean spirited, to a group of kids before I got into their presence. Like when I was a little kid, there'd be like this park, like a basketball park court, but also a field in a park. But from my there, and it was in the center of four adjoining complexes, like a quad of they were, each complex was a quad of apartment buildings, but then there was a quad of four of these complexes. But as you would come out of any of them, but especially mine, like towards the basketball court, everyone would see you walking up. Oh, here comes this one, such and such. Everyone, you'd have to walk up to the group. That might not have been unique to me. That might have been all of human society. To get on with the group, you have to walk up to the group. Everybody sees you coming, but they also got something to say before they see you get there. So you can imagine it's potential that when I was a child, something may have been said in front of me or about me when I wasn't there. Then by the time I walk up to a group of kids, they're impacted by that statement, and they're engaging me differently, so differently as to give me a horrible experience that will actually injure the development of my self-esteem and personality, then to further replicate that dynamic in walking up to other groups in my life over, and get marginalized the same way, like a bird that's unwanted like that. It didn't necessarily have to be physical contact, but it could have also been a statement. It could have been, and if you appreciate how sensitive children are, there's no telling where that influence would have come from. But a lot of my life, it reminds me of those birds like that. And it reminds me of the untouchable class in India. And it reminds me of the Roma people of India. And I have affinity with the untouchable class of India and the Roma people of the earth that I think emanate from India. And there's deep traditions around music, both the Roma people and India, including, I think, the untouchable class. And I just want to give solidarity and salute to the musical contributions of the untouchable class, and also the Gypsy people, the Roma people, and different people who have been victimized, because we're still social in nature, and enlightened in nature, in essence, and we wish to share that, but some of us don't have a means, and the only access of that is musical instruments. Because that's the only thing eloquent enough that'll get past the hatred and intolerance. Even as I'm making open-minded content like this, I think the music is what's eloquent enough. So, and I'm actually about to begin a journey with a different inclination towards music today, that I wanted to shout out that. But with the birds is like that film about the birds is that, so that'd be like the opposite. So birds will run away from, but so touch is significant like that. But sometimes you don't appreciate that it may actually be problematic how much people touch animals. Like I have a neighbor. Some of my neighbors are like a little bit kind of like off. Like it's kind of like, if you were to, what would that be like if you lived in a haunted house and you met someone and they just looked at, like you said, oh hey, I'm such and such, I just want to say what's up, and they just look at you and they go away like that. Like some of my neighbors are kind of like that. Like they're like not only standoffish, but they're like runaway offish. But they also got their dogs with them, and they're like all about being together with dogs in and out of the building, but also like very, very serious about patrolling an environment with a dog constantly. Very serious about that, but always with the dog like that. and then also like very standoffish and almost like inhuman to a neighbor like that. Like, hi, get the hell out. Like they want nothing to do with you. Complete utter indifference, almost as though they don't want to be touched by you, so that their other false friends, their other false birds, so they're about as open to relating to you as a free bird. But then also they're as careful about being touched with you as a free bird, so that they don't get ostracized by the other birds. So is Free Bird really the greatest song then? And I would imagine a lot of people that are like that would like that song Free Bird. I have family members that are from that standpoint, like kind of like they have affinity with like some of that yuppie activity or mindset, and they enjoy that Free Bird, and they go places where they play that song Free Bird. I'm not trying to shout out Free Bird, but it's just like ironic. It fits in with this narrative, what I'm saying. But so a lot of people are free birds, and they don't want nothing to do with you like a free bird. Maybe they like to sing, but they don't want nothing to do with you like a free bird. Um, but you see them every once in a while because you can't help but see birds, even free birds, but they're not there very much longer than a free bird. But this one always has a dog. A lot of them have dogs, but this one always has a dog I'm thinking of. But when I went out yesterday, that dog was crying. It was with her. She's always, I don't know if she's with the dog or the dog is with her, or the dog was stuck with her, or the dog actually likes patrolling with her and her being a free bird like that. But that dog, as that dog saw me come out, that dog was whimpering, crying. It sounded tormented, like it was reaching out. It was crying out. I don't like this. I don't like this person. I don't like walking with this person. I don't like being touched by this person. That's what it sounded like. I don't mean to. That could be. I don't mean to be. I don't mean to be slandering anyone, because I have no reason whatsoever. I just want to say for the record, I have no reason whatsoever to know or think or appreciate that the person I'm referencing, a neighbor, has anything malicious to do towards other people or animals. Probably that would be the opposite of the case. But I'm just saying that dog was crying like that. Like the dog sounded sad. That's all I'm saying. I always see this person with a dog. That person's very kind of like standoffish to me, but they're always patrolling with the dog, and the dog sounded very sad. So all I meant to say is that our contact with dogs, with animals, it may not be healthy for them, just like our contact with people is not healthy for people when it's not called for or appropriate. But that contact, that touch is still very influential. So that animals have this much contact with us, dogs, they get domestic. Part of the domestication of animals, it's not only the restriction of their freedom, which is part of it and is sad, but also their contact and being touched by people more inordinately than they would in nature. That may be a problem, and it also may corrupt animals to where animals become false like their counterparts, and maybe a problem like their counterparts, polluted like some of the attitudes of entitlement of their counterparts. So I think that sometimes like the birds, they don't exactly converge on us like in that film, Birds, like that. But if you're out of person in this society, that's what I'll say, out of person. That is, you're not stamped by or viable or winning within the collective status quo boycott machine, the boycotting of the society. When it works for you, it's rock and roll, and you have nothing but favor, almost too much of favor. All you have to do is sell your ethics and face, but you still get nothing but favor. You get defaulted to as favor. You already won the race, man. This one just walked a marathon in Southern California to get a guitar and got a story to go with it. But you actually won the marathon because you're you. You won the marathon. Oh, he just walked that and didn't break a sweat, but you won the marathon. You're better than that person because that's the default. That's privilege. Privilege is to get a ride in the go-kart past the finish line, or never even go, never have to never lift a finger or walk a foot. And then the finger that you do lift, people are near about prostrating for you as though Jesus. So was Jesus great for walking? So that's actually might be an example of entitlement. People were fawning and falling at the figure of Jesus' feet for being himself, for walking. Can I touch your garment? Wow, he's walking on water. A lot of people, they have as much privilege as if they had walked on water without walking on water. But if they actually get the interest to challenge themselves, because every once in a while it is fun to challenge yourself, and you do actually get better and have certain mannerisms when you challenge yourself. Now everyone's bending over and prostrating because, oh, the chosen one has chosen to challenge themselves for 5 feet. So let's watch them walk 5 feet and revere them watch 5 feet. That's a lot of what entitlement is. So actually, your greatest figure, Jesus Christ himself, may be the quintessential example of what entitlement is. A very entitled person that's loved and revered, worshipped, that is, a very entitled person. But a lot of people are very entitled like that and are treated almost similar. Like, we could appreciate if Jesus came back. One day Jesus is gonna come back. Nah, man, it's already this many million of them. All I know a lot of people that could pass for Jesus, like their appearance, but also I know a lot of people that get treated like Jesus and they don't gotta do too much difficulty. But when they get into difficulty, then it's even more profound. So Jesus was Jesus already Jesus before he went through difficulty, or was he Jesus and then more of Jesus for going through difficulty? So, but then other people, I would imagine that, like they say that he died on the cross. This man died on the cross for other people, but there's umpteen different people that have went through more rigorous martyrdom than that, in the name of that and outside of the name of that. People have been through more heinous atrocities. You can just go on YouTube and pick up something or a story of something as atrocious or more atrocious than Jesus on the cross. So it's actually not entirely unique to be martyred or to be victimized or to be beat, anything that's horrible. I'm not saying anything is light about martyrdom, but that's actually not entirely unique. But that he stands unique among martyrs for his appearance as like a quintessential attractive, sexually viable European male. That's actually unique because that shows that nothing's equal, not even in the afterlife, not even among martyrs. There's actually entitlement and privilege among martyrs, such as this one is worshipped, and these other umpteen people that have suffered, whether righteously or not, whether for a political cause that's expedient and popular or not, just people that survived and struggled and were victimized and brutalized by trying to be healthy, but trying to be happy. Because just because you want to save the world, you want to save the sin of every person that ever existed prior to you, during you, and after you would be alive for like a brief lifetime, relatively speaking. Just because you want to do that, that doesn't make you more viable than another person that simply wants to enjoy happiness, wants to enjoy sex, wants to enjoy something to eat, wants to enjoy the most basic of life with their opportunity to live. Because you had an opportunity to live and you chose to be great, but also to receive favors in a lifestyle and a standpoint of being great. That was your choice what to do with your life. And a lot of people are still fawning over you 2,000 years after you die, but that's not different or more of a prerogative than someone that just wants to experience their opportunity to live. But some people that try to experience their prerogative to live experience as much hellfire and suffering as what you're calling Jesus, whether or not they ascribe to a political cause or a faith cause, temporarily or at all in their life or the duration of their life. Just wanting to be happy but suffering to be happy, that's as much of a struggle and a martyrdom as any other thing you would choose to do with your life. But they're not having the same or revere and swagger, and we don't know who they are or respect who they are while they're being tormented as someone that we would call Jesus. So that's actually privilege right there. And I wanted to say that for the record, that's entitlement among martyrs. But um, but but so like with the birds is that I think that our contact with animals, according to Osho, is that it rubs off on them and it corrupts them. So when things are not working for you, when you're going through your own struggle, your own martyrdom, similar to our other martyrs, just for the most basic of life, the simple things of life. Because I listened to this interview by Aaliyah, the great singer Aaliyah, and she was crazy, she was jazzy and sexy her whole life. Like she was very beautiful her whole life, and she was having the experience of being a beautiful person her whole life and talented. But at this one, there's just one really dope interview with her on I think it was the person from 106 and Park, the lady from 106 and Park. But that lady wasn't with AJ in that interview. It was just her and Aaliyah. I think AJ might have been there, but I think it was just her and Aaliyah. A couple times in that song, in that video, Aaliyah's talking, and this music comes in. It's like some hip hop from the '90s. It might have been Missy Elliott. It's just like a regular standard hip hop song. It might have been like one of Aaliyah's songs, but it's like from that '90s area. '90s was the so I was saying in this video that 95 was my understanding of the summer of 1995 was the song Montel Jordan, "This is how we do it, and it's all good in my hood tonight." That's Montel Jordan. That's the summer of 1995 in my mind. The summer of 1997 is the song Men in Black in my mind. Also like Biggie Smalls, like Puff Daddy, I'll Be Missing You to Biggie Smalls, and like maybe some of your songs by Mace, like um uh is it All Around the World? Mace had some really big cuts that summer too, 97. But but then 96, when I had said that in another video, I couldn't think what was the song of 96. There was no song of 96. The whole year of 96 was music. That might have been one of the greater years of music in the human experience to my taste. Is this, the year of 96. There's some songs that would make me think of that. If you listen to Blackstreet, there's this some of the great. There's Teddy Riley. I think he was in Blackstreet. If you listen to the album of Blackstreet, I think it was created 96. I didn't catch on to it till after 96, but it exactly puts me in the mind frame of 96. Whatever was in the air in 1996 is in a lot of the music of 96, but especially Blackstreet, that album. If you listen to the album, I think it's the album's also called Black, so it's a self-titled album, Blackstreet by Blackstreet. If you listen to that song, you know what a lot of music is about. You also know what 1996 was about, and I think a lot of music is about 1996. I think so. So I couldn't think of that. That's not a track for the summer of '96, but that's an album for the summer of '96. Blackstreet by Blackstreet. That year, the school year '96 into '97, one of the cuts on there, I had a really cool teacher from the South. She was from Louisiana, and she got my whole class to dance that song, "No Diggity, No Doubt" by Blackstreet. So we were dancing it in the spring of '97, but it had actually came out '96, and that was funny because we'd have the end of the day every day for like a couple months to go practice dancing that song. And there was some really there's this other song around that time called like the Tootsie Roll, like Don't Stop Get. They would do this dance called the Tootsie Roll. Like some of your club songs now, like Don't Stop Get It. It comes from like that Tootsie Roll song in that same time, like '96. But there'd be these girls that they were just so goddamn attractive, like to me, as these girls that I was in class with, and they could do the Tootsie Roll like that. They could really dance like that. But then also we would do that Blackstreet like that. And we practiced up for it, and then we did it in front of the whole damn school. That might have been one of the greatest experiences for me because it got me to come out of my shell and dance in front of the whole damn school like that. But so like that's a lot of what 1996 is like Blackstreet like that vibe. But if you listen to that interview with Aaliyah on with that person from 106 in Park, one of those songs from 1996 comes on in the background as Aaliyah's talking, and you can hear that song come over the interview. It comes through Aaliyah's voice, through her disposition, through the statements and concepts she's making, through the energy between the two of them, through the demeanor of them, through the smiling of them, the laughing, through the place that they were in time when they were making that interview, what that interview meant to time, to culture at its expression then, be up to what had amounted to that time and Aaliyah's career, then and beyond. All that comes out as Aaliyah's talking. And every once in a while, I think heaven bleeds into this life for a moment. And some of the times that you pick up on it, that affects you, and a lot of what you have interest in, I'm interested in music, and I think that a lot of your interest in life, like the thing that would actually give you passion for music, as expensive and consuming as an undertaking as music is, and as thankless as it is by and large, even the cool experiences, it's largely thankless that whole time. The cool experiences that you have in music, even walking around with the instrument in public, it's maybe about 10 to 5 to 1% of the cream of your experience with music. And it takes a lot to lead up to that. But I think if you're public more, you can actually make that cream start to become 10 to 1 to 5 to 10 to 20 to 15 to 30 to 50 to 100% of your experience of music. So it doesn't have to be limited like that, but it starts out being like a lot of times limited like that. I think if you're coming from the old standpoint of how we're handed music, but some of these experiences that would something that would give you sustenance, interest to keep up with something that long is what it takes, is these moments when heaven bleed over like that. And for me, that was that Aaliyah interview like that. Something came through. But in that interview, at about that moment, she was saying, man, I just like the simple things. Like I just like the simple things. You know, just the simple things. That's what I like. That's deep what she said like that. So it's the simple things that really count. So if your struggle in this life is just for the simple things, that's not less of a struggle than someone trying to pay for the sins of this entire existence. It's not less than that, and it's not less valuable than that, and it's not less of a struggle than that. But you will probably be thanked less and respected less. But I'm not trying to say that the figure of Jesus Christ was not entitled and privileged. The real person of Jesus Christ was not entitled and privileged. And they probably had the real experience of struggle and hardship. But the story of that and the way that we pay homage to that and isolate that from other people's struggle, that's a little bit like of what privilege and entitlement is. So even people who are privileged and entitled, they don't not struggle. They're not humans. To be human is to struggle. But there's actually a difference in how we pay respect and love to people. That's more so what I'm saying. How we compensate people with respect and dignity and love is where the distinction of entitlement is expressed. But the struggle of life, the experience of life, the wins, the losses. I'm not the struggle of life, the lessons of life. No one gets away from that, I don't think. But we do get compensated differently and looked at differently by, and some of that's arbitrary, and like we default to treating other people better than others. That's all I'm saying with this. And so but I think that we don't realize how we may be rubbing off on the animals for worse, like our proximity to them, but also when you got it bad, you got it bad. So a lot of this reality that's interconnected. So we're human beings and we're digital. As long as we've been human beings, we've been digital. But our digital reality, it overlays and impacts the environment deeply. Before the internet and the computer, we were still digital, and some of our progress affected animals. We were connected to animals that whole time, but a lot of our activities affected animals deeply this whole time that we've been digital humans. But including up to the modern digital paradigm with the computers. But when you're now a bad person as the computers go, your identity is not supported, or your mode of operating is not supported by this reality. A lot of things become a problem. Even the birds can become obnoxious. So you're struggling. You got bill collectors blowing you up, this and that. Here go the crows crowing. I want to say that some of the detriment of animals in nature is part of our energy, our activity, our frenzy, our distraction, impacting the animals. The animals being closely attended and comprised of energy, and perceptive to energy, but also reflecting energy. I think that the animals can get to the point of reflecting some of our own falseness back to us, and from that standpoint be detrimental. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with animals. If anything, they're beautiful, innocent, closer to nature, closer to what this reality is than our pretensions that our digitalism bolsters up and exactly caters to in fancies, and therefore exacerbates our pretensions and falseness. But the problem more so is in the falseness and pretensions, more than the fact that we're digital, more than the fact that we're each other's keeper, more than the fact that we're a matrix from that standpoint, more than the fact that the animals are connected to us and respond to us. The problem is in our falseness and our falseness and our pretensions. But I think that the animals reflect that. And so when you got it bad, you got it bad from this entire connected reality, including the animals, and some of the attitudes that when you got it bad, they're telling you to get out of somewhere, like don't come here, you're not welcome here. That's with the people, but the animals can maybe reflect that energy. Maybe that might be someone's experience. That's some of my experiences, that when you got it bad. And then there was another film where the plants were like that, where like this guy had all these plants, and then the plants ran him out there. So what would that be if plants became a problem? But sometimes you go places, like I was in the Southwest, and there would be like a lot of rugged plants in the Southwest. They look beautiful when you got money, got it going on, you got air conditioning. But when you got some time on your hands, or time on your feet rather, you're outside in the elements without accommodations, you realize that some of these plants, like in the Southwest, they're kind of nasty. So they're like, you got cactus, you got flowers that got like sharp pointiness. They're sharp like that, they're pointed like that, they're beautiful like that because they're wicked and nasty and sharp, and they don't want to be accosted or touched outside of certain parameters. So you have different like fruits in that, even a rose. So a rose is beautiful and it offers fragrance and life, but it only wants to be accessed in certain parameters, such as is thorns. But when you're outside of what, when you're outside of person, for this reality, for plants, for people, for animals, a lot of things exactly converge and get nasty, up to and including animals and or plants, like just the whatever. So if you were in the desert and you tripped and fell on a cactus and it poked you, part of you tripping and falling on a cactus, it might have been the circumstance that got you out there in the desert. So I meant to say is that, but some of our activities, it rubs off on the environment. I think it rubs off on animals, and then it comes back to us in some of the energy of animals when it's not favorable. But then also, I think it might actually get to the point of plants. I can't speak to how profound that'd be when it's coming back from plants, but I think it's possible that the plants could start to reflect some of our falseness and our pretensions that constitute this matrix. We curate plants, animals, and people to feed into and bolster and give the sensation of the matrix, which also is substantiated in and bolsters falseness and pretension. But it could stand to reason that at a certain point, also other people, animals, and plants will start to be corrupt and poisoned, and redouble and reflect and exacerbate our own falseness. So it's like a feedback loop. And I just wanted to make that content with this that insight.